The Legend of Zelda franchise has been around for 35 years, most recently gaining a surge in popularity due to the critically acclaimed Breath of the Wild. It's even been debated as being the best Zelda game ever made, even better than Ocarina of Time, which many fans hold as their #1 Zelda game. But what made Breath of the Wild so great and successful? That's what I want to discuss with y'all in this video, so if you're new here, be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and click that subscribe button as it helps the channel out. But with that out of the way, let's get straight into the video. Breath of the Wild is most notably known for its open world and vast areas that Link can explore. But what made this map so unique and different from many other open world games? Well, for starters, the map is not flooded with missions and side quests and hidden items like most open world games typically are. The map of Breath of the Wild is actually pretty empty for the most part, not to mention completely hidden off from the beginning except for the Great Plateau. The opening of Breath of the Wild does something that I'll honestly never forget, and that is it opens the game showing you this large landscape, basically inviting you to explore the entirety of Hyrule as far out as you can see.
Look, Senpai. Everything the light touches is our kingdom.
The game entices you to see what is out there, and you're able to see what is explorable straight from the start. After completing the Great Plateau, you're suddenly shown all the Sheikah Towers emerge from the ground across all of Hyrule. This has to be one of my favorite video game experiences ever. Seeing every tower rise up across multiple biomes and harsh environments tempting the player with challenge is so well done. It allows the player to see all of what Hyrule has to offer, only in little segments. The only way to fully explore these areas is to go to them and activate these towers so the map will become unveiled. When I first played through the game, I ventured to every tower before even bothering with the main storyline. I was so focused in activating all the towers just so I could see the map in its entirety. Breath of the Wild is one of those games that is able to fully immerse the player in the environment of its open world. Every blade of grass can be cut, every tree can be chopped down, and every mountain can be climbed. The true immersion of Breath of the Wild isn't in the characters that you interact with, but instead the environment. There are endless amounts of puzzles in the overworld to be solved to gather Korok seeds for inventory expansion, endless amounts of shrines to be completed for spirit orbs to expand Link's stamina or health, plus challenging overworld bosses to encounter such as the Hinox or the Lynel. Breath of the Wild was such a big deal because it showed that long-lasting franchises can always be innovative and shake things up for the fans. Developers that actually care about making a beautiful game rather than just putting the same formula on repeat and keep things the way they've been going. I'm looking at you, Pokemon. Although I'll cut you some slack until Pokemon Legends comes out. There's one thing about Breath of the Wild that I liked, and that was no matter where you are in the world, there's always something in the distance that can entice the player and mark it as a point of interest. For example, climbing the dueling peaks and equipping the binoculars and seeing all the towers or structures in the distance that are just asking to be explored. It's one of the elements that can really keep the player wanting to explore further and easily lose track of time. I remember my first playthrough of the game was about 2 years ago. I would play it for almost 6 hours a day during winter break in college while my fiance went to work. She would leave in the morning and I would start playing, and as soon as I knew it, she was home from work and half the day was gone. I typically don't find myself entranced in a game like this, but Breath of the Wild was an exception.
Are you really going to sit inside all day and play video games?
One thing I enjoyed the most was the lack of NPCs. Yeah, the lack of NPCs. I know most people think that the world seems barren without NPCs to engage with, but for me, I quite liked the silence. No one is telling you to,
Hey, listen, close, watch out, hey, listen, close.
It's all up to you and how far you want to explore. There are things hidden in Breath of the Wild that most players may overlook, such as the Great Fairy Fountains, the Lost Woods, or Lurelin Village. The game doesn't hold your hand and tell you what to do or explore next, and that's one thing I love about this game. It completely redesigns traditional open world games by basically giving you a small tutorial area in the form of the Great Plateau and then says go figure the rest out. This game is definitely setting the standard for how open world games should be. Give the player all the essentials and then let the exploration not just be limited to the map, but also the gameplay. There are no best routes to take to get from point A to point B. This game is only limited by the player's curiosity to explore. Breath of the Wild's beautiful open design makes exploration exciting and feels fresh, whereas most open world games fail to create a captivating explorable area. This world is filled with points of interest no matter where Link is, which gives the player something to venture toward to after having explored their last landmark. These aren't just random structures though. They most often than not provide some benefit to the player in the form of a shrine, a Korok puzzle for inventory expansion, or rare materials for crafting. Collecting rare materials and crafting in Breath of the Wild feels necessary, which is one of my favorite things about the game. In some games, I feel like crafting can take away from the real immersion of the world by detracting from the story or main objective just to collect resources to craft better gear. Crafting in Breath of the Wild is focused solely on cooking. There's no armor sets, weapons, or accessories that you can craft. Cooking may seem like it's not enough substance for a crafting mechanic, but the vast amount of ingredients that yield different status effects on Link that are essential for traversal throughout the world would say otherwise. Cooking spicy peppers to create a dish that would keep Link warm while traveling through the snowy mountains, or cooking enduring fruit in order to create a dish that would provide Link with extra stamina, or cooking hearty radishes to give Link extra hearts when encountering a tough Lionel. These are just a few examples as to why cooking is essential in this game. When I played Breath of the Wild for the first time, it never felt like collecting materials was a chore, but rather an aid for survival on the odyssey I was about to venture on. Also, the crafting mechanic never felt overbearing, which tends to be a problem in open world games, which can hinder the gameplay for some players, kind of like a convoluted skill tree. Breath of the Wild nails the open world concept not only because of the vast explorable areas, but also with allowing the player complete freedom in how they want to play the game. There's not a traditional story format for you to follow, but instead there's a few handful of main storyline quests and they take place over the world in its entirety. The player is truly free to explore and the game encourages it. The main story primarily focuses on 3 main quests, which include activating the 4 divine beasts, recovering Link's memories, and defeating Ganon. And that's pretty much all the story content that is in Breath of the Wild, not including the DLC. These 3 quests typically take on average 60 to 70 hours to finish, and that is mainly due to most of the game being the exploration. Each divine beast is located in every corner of the map, which forces the player to experience each of the different regions of Hyrule. Now, the game does allow the player to venture to Hyrule Castle and defeat Ganon right from the start, however it will be extremely challenging. The traditional route would be to conquer each of the divine beasts, complete shrines in order to extend Link's health and stamina, and unlock Link's memories along the way. I've completed 2 playthroughs of Breath of the Wild and the game still manages to feel fresh and exciting every time I replay it. Now, nothing will ever compare to the first time I played Breath of the Wild where everything is truly seen with a set of fresh eyes. But playing again, it still manages to hook its teeth in you and the cycle of constant playing repeats itself.
It's beautiful. I've looked at this for 5 hours now. I like the green one and the red circle right here. I'm tearing up, man.
The first time I played the game, I went through the overworld in a counterclockwise fashion, exploring dueling peaks and Zora's Domain in a cyclical nature. The second time I played the game, I went a completely different route and explored clockwise, starting with Gerudo Town and ending at Zora's Domain. But that's the beauty of the game, being able to play it however you like to. There's no set guide as to how you play the game and progress in the story, which is something I think I love to see be explored in future games, not just limited to the Legend of Zelda franchise. As far as story content goes, it's pretty lackluster. I've definitely played games that have a more captivating storyline, such as God of War and Red Dead Redemption 2. But for Breath of the Wild sequel, I definitely think we will see a more coherent and robust storyline. Breath of the Wild is already critically acclaimed as one of the best games of this generation, even when the story falls flat. I could only imagine that with the bold open world design of the sequel and a fully developed plot, we'd probably be playing one of the greatest games ever created. This is why the hype for Breath of the Wild sequel is so high, because a lot of the flaws fans and critics pointed out in the first game, we hope to see be improved upon in the next. Breath of the Wild stays true to its Legend of Zelda roots, but the best thing about this game is the direction the franchise will keep progressing in. Speculation as to what's in store for new Zelda games after Breath of the Wild sequel comes out is endless. Are we staying in the fully explorable open world Hyrule? Are we going to see any new top-down linear style Zelda games like Link's Awakening's remake? There are countless questions, but that is what excites fans the most.
Dude, I get these ideas. I got so many ideas burning through my skull, buddy.
The game wasn't a perfect 10 out of 10, but it laid the groundwork for what is yet to come. The combat system is extremely well done. It has a good mix of versatility in the mechanics when engaging enemy camps or overworld bosses. The utilization of both your bows and swords to kill monsters is a good base, but when you throw in the mix of weapon durability, different elemental arrows and sword effects, and the bonus stats like durability up or damage increase, it provides a more robust combat system for the player throughout the journey. The player can also make use of runes to aid themselves in combat as well. Bombs and stasis, however, I found to be the most effective in a dire situation. Being able to stop an enemy in his tracks as it's chasing you can easily turn the tide of a battle. Bombs are, well, bombs. They're good for, blowing stuff up. Another great feature of Breath of the Wild's dynamic combat system is the environment in which the player encounters enemies, such as being able to roll a boulder off a cliff into an unsuspecting enemy, or shooting the rope holding a lantern that is hanging above exploding barrels, defeating all the monsters in the camp at once. The environment is one big playground for the player to experiment using all the tools they've been given. Not only is there creative freedom in where you can explore and how you can progress in the story, but also in how you can defeat enemies. This is something that truly makes Breath of the Wild stand out amongst other games of this generation. Wandering through the open environment and stumbling across a sleeping Hinox or finding a gem rock and realizing it's a stone talus has to be some of my favorite experiences with Breath of the Wild. The overworld bosses provide a great challenge for the player when exploring, because there's really no best method for killing these beasts, which makes the encounter that much more exciting. After playing the game for over 140 hours, the overworld bosses become easier to beat with practice. However, I'm still not a fan of the Guardians. Their nasty tentacle legs and their overpowered laser beams are just asking to be one of my nightmares.
Why are you the way that you are? Honestly, every time I try to do something fun or exciting, you make it not that way. I hate so much about the things that you choose to be.
Breath of the Wild has to be one of the boldest games I've played in recent years, aside from God of War. Breath of the Wild not only completely redefined the Legend of Zelda franchise, but also open world games in their entirety with the dynamic combat system and limitless exploration. We've already seen the influence Breath of the Wild has had on the gaming industry, with titles like Immortals Phoenix Rising, Genshin Impact, and the newly revealed Pokemon Legends Arceus, utilizing similar art styles and traversal mechanics. I think that Breath of the Wild not only impacted open world games, but the entire gaming industry as a whole. It is truly a game where the only limit is your curiosity to explore the environment. I remember the first time I played it, I didn't even know you could develop a city called Terrytown after buying Link a house and purchasing all the upgrades. It's one of those games you can play for hundreds of hours and still not experience everything hidden within Hyrule, and that is one of the many things I love about Breath of the Wild. I stated earlier that when I first played this game in college, I would play it for 6 hours a day and only stop when my fiance came home from work. It started slow for me, to be honest. It took a while to get a hang of the combat system, and I wasn't familiar with being in complete control of the destination I wanted to traverse to. I never once played a game where you can go wherever you please with no real destination in mind until I played Breath of the Wild. So yeah, it may have a slow start in order to get familiar with the controls and the freedom you have, but once you get the hang of it, that's when it really hooks you. If for some reason you haven't played Breath of the Wild yet, I strongly encourage you to play it. The experience of playing this game for the first time is something I wish I could re-experience again, so if this video encourages you to play Breath of the Wild, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Also, for those who have played the game, how many times have you played it and what are some of the things you love about the game? Honestly, after writing this and recording it, I'm seriously considering playing it for a third time if I didn't have such a big gaming backlog already, but I think I can make time for one more playthrough. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe as it helps the channel out and leave a like as well, and I'll see y'all in the next video.